Hey guys, Ryan Gill here from Hunt Primitive, and I want to talk to you just a second about some foreshafts and stuff that I'm working on. And this is actually one of the foreshafts that I brought along on the bison hunt, and this one's actually a little bit longer. The other ones were probably all about, maybe that long or so. And the reason for the length in that, of course this is stuck in the end of the Atlatl, the reason for that is I wanted to almost see how much penetration I could get, and I was afraid that the transition would halt penetration. And hunting an animal the size of a bison, we really want to make sure we get optimal penetration. And we did. We actually passed two of these through, if you haven't been kind of following along. And I know that the video is not out yet. We're still looking at maybe June or July till the video comes out. So I know that's going to be hot on your question list. But anyway, we passed this completely through the animal. The first one even went through its heart, the second went through its lungs, and both points embedded in the opposite shoulder. So we got maximum penetration on it. Now, a new project here that I am working on is this, and this is actually a little bit closer to an artifact I believe that was discovered in a cave somewhere. It wasn't the exact same style of point, but a much shorter foreshaft. And when you put this into the end of an Atlatl spear, there's going to be an abrupt transition right here. And that's going to essentially stop or really inhibit penetration when it hits that. And so a lot of people could look at these shorter foreshafts and say, well, you're not going to get the penetration you need, but the distance between here and here is still pretty darn deep. Now, I'm not saying that we would want to necessarily go hunt megafauna with it, and if I was hunting bison, I think I'd go with at least a little bit longer, maybe a few more inches. But something like this would be really good for anything from deer and caribou, that kind of size, even bear. In my situation, I'll probably actually be taking this more pig hunting. Now, the reason that I want this to be short, and I actually think this may be the same exact reason, not exactly, but very, very similar reason as to why Primitive Man wanted it short, is because this point, especially being, this one's made out of raw coral and it's napped, obviously with Aboriginal style tools, hammerstones, and antler. And it takes a lot of time, a lot of skill, and a lot of really nice resource to be able to make this point. And so it's a very valuable resource, and we want to retain that. We don't necessarily want to kill an animal and we lose it. And if we use a properly sized foreshaft, what may happen is it may enter the animal, say like this, go all the way through both lungs or into the vitals, potentially even poke out the other side. But if we size it correctly on an animal that's about that wide, we're going to do maximum damage, but the point is going to remain, and actually even the foreshaft for that matter, because these detach relatively easily. These tapered, drilled, socketed hardwood foreshafts detach really easily. And what may happen is when we spear an animal, it sits in its body cavity like this, and it carries that. So then when we recover the animal, we can recover this whole. And if it's detached from the foreshaft, that's fine. We can just reheat the pitch and reset it. And of course, I do still have to wrap this one with sinew before it's complete. But the idea is to retain this point so we can use it over and over and sharpen it down, more and more and more. And so this is more of like a Bolen style point. Again, this one's napped from raw coral. And what's really interesting about this is I'm going to be using this in a new project, and hopefully I don't lose it or completely break it to the point that it's unusable. But what I did was I actually made a cast of it. So if you've been following along with my story here, I've been doing lithic casting here as of late. So I made a perfect high definition cast of this same exact point. And the goal here in the future is to take this point, use it and abuse it in many different scenarios. It may even be throwing at a rabbit or throwing at a pig, maybe do penetration tests or practicing with it. And throughout this point's life, we're going to chip it down more and more and more as we sharpen it, and maybe we break it or get an impact fracture and we have to adjust the point. And every time I hit a significant milestone or suffer a significant break on the point, we're going to actually stop, take it out of the haft, and we're going to recast the point. And then at that point, re-chip it and then cast it again, mount it up, and we're going to keep going. So that's actually something that we're really working on. This is that new project, new I wouldn't necessarily call it a Bolen specific project, but I'm calling it my Bolen project because that's the project, that's the point style that I'm using. And that's also because we see a lot of Bolens here in the southeast that are beveled. And that is something I also want to show in the resharpening process, is how we start off with something like a Bolen plane. And about the time we're done with it, it starts looking something more like a Bolen bevel. So I would say follow along with the journey on this, because we're hoping to really put this piece through its paces and see, more so I guess not so much see, but track the progress of this point's life, because I think we're going to see some really interesting things along those lines. So also, if you haven't seen, and I will put a link to it somewhere, be it in the description or in my profile or somewhere you can find it, even send me a PM and ask if you would like. But I'm doing something called the Cast of the Month Club, where I do casts similar to this, but a lot of it's with points that I've actually killed animals with. And if you join the Cast of the Month Club, it's $20 a month, but that obviously includes shipping and the cast and everything. You get a new cast every single month, and the story as well that goes along with it. We'll have a nice color printout with a picture of the original point and the story as to how the break or whatever the story is of that individual point. But you'll get that every single month, and all the proceeds we get from that actually go right back into experimental archaeology, and that pays for filming and university testing, all that kind of stuff that actually costs quite a bit of money. So if you haven't signed up for that, at least look for it. It's the Hunt Primitive Patreon account. So anything that you contribute for in the Hunt Primitive Patreon, 100% of that goes right back into experimental archaeology stuff. So do please take a look at that. But hopefully you'll follow along with Hunt Primitive on Instagram and Hunt Primitive /Gills Primitive Archery on Facebook, and the Hunt Primitive YouTube channel. And hopefully you'll be able to track the progress of this point throughout the next several months as we use and abuse, resharpen, reface everything that we need to do until this point is pretty much no longer serviceable. So thanks for watching, and we will catch you on the next adventure.